Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today on the first day of December. We have our first Tuesday, as we usually do, Metro Archives. We're in the Commons room of the Public Library. I want to thank you for coming today and being here. This is a great crowd. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. Ralkin Wagner's volunteering for us, and he's been a Nashvilleian, and he's been volunteering for a long time, and he's real big into railroads, streetcars, so I'm looking forward to this today. So I appreciate you being here. We're going to have a little bit different format. We're going to have the PowerPoint along with music, so it'll be Christmas music to go along with it. And my daughter was helping me put together this Christmas music last night, so I've got Christmas music in my head, so that's your fault, Ralkin. And so we have that. On January 5th, we'll have Rice and Towns. Reese? I do that every time. I'm going to get it right before January. Reese and Towns. She's going to be talking about Nashville floods. And February 2nd, we have Betsy Thorpe. She will be back to talk about the 1918 train wreck here, Dutchman's Curve. And then in March 1st, Debbie Watts is going to come back. You know, she plays Betty Ryman in the play, Ryman Diaries. Well, she's going to come back and speak to us about taking history to the stage. And so that'll be in March. That's it for right now. Again, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you viewing from YouTube. If we can do anything for you, let us know. I'm going to turn it over to Ralkin. I'll get the PowerPoint set up and get the music going, and then Ralkin can talk to you about what he's going to present today. So, Ralkin.
Well, thanks for showing up today. Happy December. Anyway, this program is going to cover 100 years of Nashville's railroad heritage. Since the mid-19th century, Nashville has been an established hub for the region's railroads. During the early years of railroading, the city was served by several railroads, which later were consolidated by the larger lines. For much of the 20th century, the city was served by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway, and the Tennessee Central Railway. In the latter part of the 20th century, in the 1950s and 60s, through mergers, of course, the NC and St. L and L&N consolidated, and then also then everything was swallowed up by CSX in the mid-80s. So today, Nashville is served by CSX Railroad and two short lines, the Nashville and Eastern, which goes from here eastward toward Cookeville and Monterey, and also the Nashville Western that goes out in the opposite direction to Ashland City. After 1971, Nashville was served by just one passenger train in each direction, operated by Amtrak. The train, the Floridian, operated just 8 years before being discontinued in 1979. We thought we'd do something a bit different, as Ken said, for the first Tuesday at the archives. This being the holiday season, it seemed appropriate to him some sort of festive music with this. So these images are a celebration of Nashville's railroad history and sort of begin during the Civil War, 1850s, and go on up to 2006. So we'll have a Q&A afterwards, so hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
We appreciate Rolk and Beaner. Does anyone have any questions for him?
Yes, sir.
Can we get a copy of that?
It's funny you happen to mention this. Hopefully in about a year there'll be a book coming out with some of this. And there'll be another one coming out that Arcadia is doing on the streetcars. So 1 year from now, hopefully one or both of those will be in print and ready. And maybe we'll meet here again for that.
With all the same pictures?
Still trying to work that out. A lot of them, plus a lot of them that didn't show. But a lot of those are copyright protected, and some of those belong to the archives. And in fact, one of you recently donated two of those views to the archives. Mr. Ridley Wills, 2 of those were your postcards. So, yeah, those were yours, and you get credit for them. But anyway, there's sort of a compilation of different things. But the ones after 1970 are mostly mine. So, but yeah, I'm trying to look at something to put together in that.
I wonder if you could give us a forecast on the future of commuter rails around Nashville.
I don't have good news about it. It looks like there are currently being meetings, community meetings all around the Middle Tennessee area, as I understand it. I always thought that a good candidate, well, CSX has been adamant about not wanting any passenger or commuter trains. And they have a good reason for that, and they're not just being cold about it. Most of those lines are single tracks, and until some money could be found to double track that line to increase capacity, that would be almost impossible to do. You could see increased service between here and Lebanon, maybe, if they got some dedicated funding for the Music City Star, and possibly a line going toward Clarksville. But that would be very expensive to do. But it's feasible if the money were here, whereas the other lines going to, say, lines to Murfreesboro and Gallatin would probably be almost out of the question if you could even get CSX.
I know the folks in Bellevue would love it.
Oh yeah, it would be, and the way traffic's going, they may have to reconsider that soon.
Yes.
Any else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, currently, I'm for the first time reading Air Castle of the South, the book, and it says WSM broadcasts the sound of a train going by.
That's correct.
For 10 years or more, and I'm wondering if any recording of that is still available.
Okay, I know the one they recorded on the recording you're talking about, Tom, is the Pan American. Oh, okay. But the Dixie Flyer ran on another line going from here toward Atlanta and Florida. But yeah, the Pan American, well, yeah, they're all, but yeah, they may have one. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that was something they would do. I don't know if they did that in conjunction with the Opry or not. And that what they did, a couple of the shots had the Vine Hill Tower. At one time they, I think they originally did it out on Concord Road by where the WSM Tower was. And then at some point later they did it, it wasn't as convenient, so they would go over to Vine Hill Tower, which is off Berry Road in the Melrose area. And there were pictures of the Vine Hill Tower, and they had, there's some pictures of them hanging a microphone out of the window and the Pan American going by. So they did that until maybe the late 30s.
Is there a difference between a trolley and a streetcar?
That's a good question. It's one I've researched all year. It depends on the community. Well, for instance, in Europe, they've always called them trams, but they're the same thing. In Nashville, as far as I know, they always called them streetcars. Other cities, they called them trolleys. But as far as I know, the two terms were interchangeable.
So it isn't a difference between the age with the wheels and the age with electricity?
No, I think the two terms were used interchangeably for reasons I don't know. The name streetcar stuck, but yet, if you look at some of the old photos, they say no spitting on the trolley. So that kind of contradicts that a little bit, but it just depends on the community. When San Diego was the first line to get, the first city to get a light rail line, I believe it was in '81, and they just for nostalgia's sake, instead of calling it a light rail line, they called it the San Diego Trolley, and that sort of ushered in the new age of all the new light rail systems that have opened across the country in the last 35 years. And then we talk about streetcars. They started having mule-powered streetcars. Then they had 3 streetcar lines that were called dummy lines, and they were steam locomotives that were disguised to look like a streetcar or a passenger car, and literally were supposedly they weren't as apt to scare the horses, and they were less objectionable. But those didn't last too long. Those were eventually converted to electricity as well.
You know, I just finished reading the book by Jack Norman, you know, Nashville I Knew. And I was astounded, because railroads were a little before the time I knew them, at the multiple, how many people it took doing how many different jobs to keep them in shape. It's really astounding.
Well, steam locomotives were very high maintenance. You had to have people to shovel the coal and clean the boilers, and when all the railroads dieselized in the late 40s and early 50s, that cut most of those jobs.
All the cleaning crews to clean when they came in the station, I guess the guys on the line, it's really amazing how many different specialties there were just working.
Plus at one time, well, now like most of the tracks in Nashville, I think are for CSX are controlled with at Jacksonville, Florida, their corporate headquarters. But at one time, I'm thinking in the 30s or 40s, we had something like 8 or 10 interlocking towers in Nashville, and some of those were in the program. Amqui, and you had one at Maplewood, Vine Hill, Church Street had one, Oak Street Tower, South End, to name a few. And so, yeah, just people to throw the switches and control, and they couldn't do it remotely. They had to have several to do the job of what 1 or 2 places can do today. So it did require a lot of people, and over the years, they've pretty much streamlined it.
Back in the steam engine days, you were talking about how many folks are involved to keep the railroad going. Was there a hierarchy in terms of the train itself? Where did the buck stop?
You mean,
Who was in charge?
normally the conductor was the highest authority on the train. And like you mentioned, yard master, I think that was the highest authority in the railroad yard, and then I think they had superintendents on down. But on the train it would be the conductor, and I guess then the engineer.
So if the conductor said the train's not going, it's not going.
That's my understanding. But it's great to hear people talk about their experiences on the train. I'm the first one to admit we need to start recording. We've talked about this recently with someone, that all these people that remember riding those trains really ought to sit down and be interviewed. It's just taking the time to do it. And we could start with you, Mr. Wills. Plus, a lot of folks in this this room remember when trains were still in their heyday and before airplanes became so prominent. And even as a young child in the 50s and then through the 60s, I have such good memories of when railroads took pride in their trains, all the named trains, and it was a great way to travel, still is.
Thanks for coming. Y'all are a great crowd, and I love doing these first Tuesdays, and it's a lot of fun to have these. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Have a great holiday and take care, and I guess I'll see you all in January.